are all portals to the infinite. Welcome to In the Particles, where we gather with our community to talk about the creative process and postmodern performance practices and explore a perhaps new art movement that we're calling particlism.
Ready?
Are we ready?
Yeah.
I'm recording.
Okay, cool.
Hi.
Hey.
Oh, so awkward.
Speaking into the void of the future.
Welcome to the In the Particles.
Welcome.
We're surrounded by books. It's very distracting.
It is. I just keep... The words in my mind keep getting replaced by the mass ornament and how... And, yeah, I don't even want to read some of these out.
This is a fractured conversation.
Image, music, text. A bed called home.
But we're back together again.
Yay.
We're in the same space.
We're in the same space, exactly. In Brooklyn.
Wait, who are we?
I'm Youlim.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Deborah.
And we thought we would talk today about the experience that we just had performing together.
Yes.
Restaging a collaboration that Deborah and I have been working on for 5 years, on and off. That is also in collaboration with Mary Overlie. She drew a line drawing that had two curving and angling lines. She wrote ephemera underneath that drawing, and she gave it to me and she said, "This is a floor pattern for a duet. It's about speed and light." And then she made a motion with her hands moving over her face and moving past her face and then branching out to the side. And she said, "You think it's this, but it's this."
Yes.
Would you like to maybe briefly introduce Mary Overlie again for those who listen to this episode for the first time? Who skipped the first few episodes?
Sure.
Sure. Mary Overlie was a choreographer, director, philosopher, dancer, performer, a clown, maybe, who articulated the theory and practice of the 6 viewpoints, which has spread like tumbleweeds all over planet Earth, into different performance training circles and performance making villages. And she is our dear friend and our teacher. And Deborah and I run the Mary Overlie Legacy Project with Nicolas Norenia and Tony Perucci. And when we were making Ephemera, Deborah and I had the opportunity to really explore Mary's archive. So we're making this dance that she commissioned us to do, basically. And I had collected her archive from her home when she passed away in 2020 to prepare it to go to Fales Performing Arts Library. And so Deborah and I decided to spend a lot of time with her videos and photographs of her work over decades while we built Ephemera.
Yeah. Fales Library is at NYU, Greenwich Village, in case anybody is wondering. And do you know when it will be available for people to look at?
I don't know when it'll be available.
Yes,
But
it is there, and hopefully at some point it's open to the public. By appointment. You have to have an appointment at Fales, and I think anybody can go. But yeah.
So when we, just to go back a little bit about how we made this, and Deborah and I got the floor pattern that Mary drew, and we taped it out on the ground so that we could be very exacting. And then we spent just hours and hours and hours and hours exploring this floor pattern.
Wow.
Hanging out on it, finding shapes on it, being in relationship to each other on each of our floor patterns that were kind of writing next to each other. And as we did that, a conversation kind of started coming about where we're like, how interesting that Deborah comes from a dance background, and I come from a theater background. And we met, before we met, both of us kind of bridged over through the invisible wall into the other form, and are both interested in this space that is so often separated in like the way that performance has been professionalized. And something about meeting Mary as like a merging place between theater and dance got us thinking about how about the way that we differentiate as beings. And so we were like, well, what does differentiating as a being mean?
What does that mean?
Like becoming a unique person. Like we all start as
like a cell.
A cell. Yeah, we all start as a zygote, an egg and a sperm meet with a lot of very unique DNA.
Right.
But the uniqueness of the DNA is some tiny percentage to what we all have in common. And on top of that, we're all made of the same molecules, like carbon and oxygen and hydrogen. So we somehow started getting really curious about this field of potential from which we all rise, and so we started exploring the dawn of the universe.
Yes.
So exploring the dawn of the universe and the different forces at play while exploring Mary's archive was, I think, the basis for this dance.
Yes, and I as I'm listening to you talk, I was teaching yesterday at Stella Adler, where Sophia used to teach, for a physical theater intensive workshop.
Oh yeah, they do that.
Teaching the 6 viewpoints, and the students there are really keen to create their own work. So it's a place where people come. I'm sure you've taught in that in previous summers as well.
And I took it as a student when I was in college.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, like back in 2010, I think I took it.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, the students are really keen to make their own work, to make original work. And as I was listening to you talk, I mean, Mary kind of gave us this impossible set of instructions. And, somehow yesterday in our conversation after doing some space practices, we were doing architectural space, which is a really playful practice where you get to measure the space with your body. You get to touch everything actively. You have to kind of put on the mindset of maybe you're playing, you're a toddler, you're a child. It's a kind of curiosity, sticking with something for as long as you want.
That's called architecture exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really figuring it out. And after we finished, somebody said something along the lines of like, it's so nice to have that amount of time to just play. It's like we never really get the opportunity to do this. It's always you come in the room and you start like working or something like that. And I said, yeah, isn't that interesting that, you don't get time to play? And because I've mostly worked in a space where I am creating original work, I very rarely interpret somebody else's text. That's not really my thing. And even though Mary gave us these instructions, right, that is something that we had to figure out. But I think in a certain way, because we come from these opposite ends of the spectrum, Sophia being an actor and me being a dancer, and I love that word, the invisible wall, because it's really not real, but it's so real, that we had to find, before we even had something to put together, right, like constructing something, we had to figure out how to work together also. And that meant like a lot of like just playing or trying something out, or like spending time in one of Mary's practices, or slightly shifting one of Mary's practices. Or I often draw from, practices of other choreographers, and I'll be like, do you want to try this, Sophia? This is something I like to do. You want to just try it? Let's see how it works between the two of us. Or I remember we also had like a pile of books at the beginning. And we were looking at some text and seeing how the text might fall onto the body on these floor patterns as like a way to create movement that might live on the floor patterns. So there's this idea that, maybe you could just start making something, but actually, like, there's, especially in collaboration, there's also a moment where you have to figure out how you're going to work together. And I think also collaborating with someone who is no longer on this plane means we also had to figure that out too. Like, how do we work with Mary, her memory, the things that she left behind, her ephemera that she left behind. And I feel like I had that realization yesterday, right? And I think that that's something that is often overlooked in spaces of education, like where artists are showing up to become professionals, right? It's like, where is the time where you're like, how would I want to do this, right? Or how do we do this together without pressure? We can just play, and we can just kind of meet each other and not worry about it so much. And I really feel
and
like...
how do we meet each other? What is it like to be in the room with each other? Can we be in the room together?
Absolutely.
Like, is there chemistry here? Is there generosity here? Is there enough shared interest? Yeah, just having the time to even ask those questions, you're right, is like very often overlooked.
Very much.
Very much.
Yeah.
And then like the way of going. Yeah, and we were making this during COVID time, so we really weren't expecting any kind of performance anytime soon, because performances were put on hold, basically.
Right.
And we were doing it because we needed to be doing something we were interested in. So we had the time, which was...
Do you think that gave you guys more time to explore and play because it was pandemic?
Probably we were able to be more consistent because of that, because we got together usually twice a week, right? So I think it led to consistency, which is key for me anyhow.
And a slow growth.
And slow, being able to be slow. And we didn't have our first public performance. It was about not even 1 year after we started, or around 1 year after we started. We showed like an 18-minute work in progress.
Yeah, the movement research, right?
Yeah. So for me, that's also an ideal working situation. I like to have, and dancers in New York tend to work in that way. It's not the theater schedule at all.
I love that.
Yeah.
Or you might rehearse, 2 or 3 times a week. It almost feels like you're an opera singer. Like, I must rest for between rehearsals or something. But yeah, typically when I was working in dance companies or for independent choreographers, we would rehearse a few times a week, but it would often last 9 months or something like that.
That's really nice. Yeah, very different than theaters, for sure.
6 weeks makes something evening length.
Yeah.
Meet every day.
And
don't sleep.
Yeah,
not allowed to eat.
There's no many playtime, for sure.
Yeah.
It's all about like making it happen.
Yeah. And then, yeah, like occasionally you might have a residency that doesn't require you to make anything. Do theater people do that?
I don't think it's nearly as big of a...
Yeah.
It's not a known option to a
But
lot of...
Playwrights must, or
Yes.
directors,
Yeah.
or some, right? There must be
Yes.
some incubators for some people in theater.
There are incubators,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like for theaters, when you have a director and play, then you're like ready to jump in.
Right, when you have the play already kind
Yeah,
of
that's
through
already,
a
like-
certain amount of
Uh-huh.
feedback or something, then you're ready to kind of like get actors in the room with you or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of directors do take time before entering that room, like a lot of time to have a relationship with the play.
Yes,
Yeah,
or
actors
work with
too.
a dramaturg or something and
Yeah.
do all of that kind of like slow labor.
Right, but I think it's thought of as more of as an individual thing than
Yeah.
being in a room. But anyway, I do think it's interesting that we worked that way together, and then we brought in this huge ensemble. We decided to include a huge ensemble called the Particleists, which we'll talk about. But we decided to create this huge ensemble and only have 2 rehearsals together.
That was so
Yeah.
radical.
You know?
So there were 2 of us and we worked maybe 2 years, twice a week.
Yeah.
very, very slowly. And then we had 2 rehearsals with this massive ensemble. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was just right,
Yes.
I felt.
Yes.
So
So do you want to talk about...
yeah, so just in talking about particleism a bit, you know, what this podcast is, one of the things is trying to explore is like, what is particleism? And in thinking about this piece, Ephemera, I do think that in many ways we were exploring the ideas of particleism kind of as that name was occurring to me as a phenomenon that came from working within the viewpoints very deeply for a long time. And as Mary would say, this work is all about particularizing, about becoming more subtle in our awareness, picking up smaller pieces of information, and understanding that when we attune to the particles, when we give ourselves a chance to, which takes time, to notice the particles, which you could think of as like little bits of information or sensation, whatnot, that we are really never alone when we're with the particles. And we're always with the particles. It's just, am I allowing myself to be aware of it or not? Am I acknowledging that the particles are all around me, inside of me, past, present, future? So we were starting from this place of the origin of this universe, or at least the theories around it, and kind of leading up from the Big Bang through evolution to Mary, and then through Mary into this explosion of really differentiated, unique, diverse people who were highlighted as our ensemble. So the Particleists were invited to join us as themselves as artists through exploring artists that they loved. So we asked them to choose a piece of art and a piece of music that they absolutely loved and to study that, to have them join us in this making art through studying someone else's art process, and really kind of opening up to the fact that we are all beneficiaries of extensive lineages of art makers and thinkers and wayfinders and cultural movers. and at that time, I think I was thinking of this piece really as an ode to our lineages. And what happened when I watched it was that I saw this absolute beauty of freedom. That, like, when we embrace the wealth of our lineages and like give ourselves a chance to appreciate everything that is like leading up and through us, we blossom. We have room to blossom, and we, I think, have courage to blossom. Yeah, do you want to say anything about the particleists?
Yes, it was, I mean, I think in our original iteration, which was 2023, and we performed it at Stella Adler as part of their movement and dance residency, MAD.
The Harold Clurman...
Or not music, movement.
Movement and dance. The Harold Clurman Artist in Residence for Movement and Dance Theater.
Right. Yeah. So it was, I remember it was just like a month or 2 or 3 maybe before our show. We were, I don't even know if it was you or me, but there was a moment where we were like, I feel like this isn't just a duet. And I think you had mentioned, like, I feel like there should be a third person. And we were thinking about, like, who would that third person be? And it kind of just, like, hung for a little while, this, like, idea of someone else coming in at a certain point. And then, I don't even know how it happened, but all of a sudden it was like, wait, what if it was actually, like, an explosion of the particles, right? That there are these sections of the piece that kind of allude to cellular differentiation, proteins being made, Big Bang, all of these things. And I feel like when that happened, it was like a big aha. And in our remounting of the piece that we just finished a few weeks ago, we kind of rethought how that ensemble would enter and their presence throughout the piece. And Adam Baron-Block, who made the music, he really pointed out that by placing the particleists throughout the work, it made it less of like a ta-da kind of like
a fireworks show.
Fireworks show, yeah, where it's like 1 firework, 2 firework, and then like a million at the end. And I think that the other thing that we changed because we watched the original version, and it was, the Stella Adler Theater is fairly small. It's a New York City black box. It's pretty small. It's on the very small side. Right, so the space sort of created circumstances for the particleists themselves and how they were functioning in the space. And because they were coming out at the end, I think after what we've made is like sort of, I think it's a beautiful kind of art object, this duet that we made. I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, they're way too serious. You know, I was like, whoa, this should be a celebration. And so in the second iteration, we also preferenced like joy and celebration of those lineages and of just being together and being on stage. And we haven't watched the video yet, but it felt very much like that, and we got some feedback that that's what people really saw and what they experienced on stage as well. So it definitely went through some changes, because I think also because the first time we did it, it was like a brand new idea, and we were like, we're not sure what it is, you know, as you are in any artistic process. There's this thing of like, we're not sure, but this is what it is for now. And then having that time to reflect on it afterwards, you know, 2 years after, and being able to rethink it, I think it really became maybe closer to like and I think where I was kind of starting with this whole thing was like, after we performed it the first time, I sort of stepped away from it. I was like, oh my, this could be a really incredible community engagement project where we could travel, work with folks, bring them into the 6 Viewpoints practice, and also invite them on stage with us. And so it was really exciting that we got to try it in that way. So we had an open call in Salisbury, Maryland, and we had about 25 particleists come. Some of whom we knew already, and then quite a few that we just meeting. And so to see that come together and, yes, be like this celebration of lineage, but then also just like, we're doing this together, after 2 rehearsals and a tech, was really exciting. It feels like layers of this idea of particlism that yes, it's a philosophy or an art movement, but it's also just like the viewpoints. Yes, it's ideas, but it's also can be put into practice quickly, immediately, and people can really feel the power of the work.
And I think is a way of being together. It's like a way of practicing being. I don't know what the right word is, if it's like being ourselves, being curious, being authentic, following our interest. And when I mean interest, I mean like our
intuition,
and our satisfaction and our
yes.
desire and a sense of finding some pleasure in what it is to be in this very moment, a way of going through that very personal felt sense of that alongside other people who are also doing that, where there's room for everyone inside of this community. At least this is the goal. There's room for everyone and an encouragement for everyone to go into what gives them, their super special juice feeling.
Yeah. I feel like you can call it also lifestyle.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, it's a way of living for sure.
Yeah.
Of accepting and a way of playing. And I think like pointing to the levels of community and like time spent as levels of also particlism is interesting, because there's like the residue or the ephemera of the past and the foundation of that, and then the particulates of the moment, like the way things come to fruition in the moment because there's energy afoot. And leaving Salisbury got to feel like we actually had left a gift.
For sure,
which
yes.
was a space and a connection between people who live there, who actually have a community to be in together, that they didn't know before. Do you need to get the door?
Oh, yeah.
Youlim's doorbell's ringing.
Okay, BRB.
We'll cut this part out,
Maybe. But I was talking to our great friend Sebastiani Romagnolo the other day.
Romagnolo.
Yes, and he's been really, really getting into pottery, and one of the things that he loves about it is that it for him it's a practice of art as a gift. And he was talking about being a part of our Viewpoints Jam that we just had last week, and how that felt like art as gift. That coming together in the practice is a way of giving each other the gift of time and space, and also that I think the work that bubbles out of this, at least of this like particleist ensemble, the work itself feels like a gift to me, both to the waymakers and artists that we are downstream from, like our teachers and those who inspire us, as well as to our audience. Mm-hmm. That it's something that is an offering, kind of in both directions. Yeah, how did it feel to be? What was it like to be a particleist, Youlim? Youlim was a particleist in both the 2023 and this 2025 ephemera.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how to start, but I'm gonna start saying in general, like it was a huge liberation, and spaciousness, because in 2023, I mean, I have to say this first. At Salisbury, I didn't express this to you guys, but you guys were so radical.
What do you mean? In what way?
I really wasn't sure, like, what was going on. I'm like...
Want some water?
Do you need water? Is that your water?
Yes, I'm gonna drink my water.
I'm so curious what you're gonna say.
I guess because my headspace has been in a traditional theater. I'm producing and directing a short play of mine, and that's a traditional, also hierarchical, practice. Because as a producer, I have to take care of many things, and then take some responsibilities. But in Salisbury, just watching you guys, like how to practice this into work, I want to say, like, is it like, this is too much freedom? And is it gonna work? I guess, yeah. So it was really interesting, but I knew it was gonna work, but I guess it's more of a curiosity. Okay, things are going, and it was very radical. The reason why I say it was radical, like, for example, you guys gave all the particleists, like, so much freedom. I mean, it's almost, it was an unlimited freedom. Like, we had 2 rehearsals and the tech rehearsal.
And in what ways were we giving you freedom? Like, just for someone who wasn't there, can you describe?
So rehearsal. So we had 2 rehearsals, 1 tech rehearsal, and then none of them were mandatory. I was like, oh.
That is radical to not mandate rehearsal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's always another way, another space to go to as a performer, as a particleist. And if you can't make it, it's fine. And if you don't want to do this, it's fine. So everything was fine. And then I was like, oh my gosh. So that's why I said radical. And so it was...
Yeah, it was.
Truly...
So you don't have to come to the rehearsals, but you can. You can perform in both shows, but you don't have to. And we're asking you to create your own material based on artists you like. Mm-hmm. We did provide some instruction about how to create a score.
Yes.
So we asked people to make a floor pattern, like a way of walking through the space, and to source shapes from the art that they studied, as well as
music.
Yeah, as well as time from the music that they studied. So we gave some structure around the score, but there was no curation.
No curation. And
of
even
what
at
it
the
was.
end, you said if you feel like you can get rid of the floor pattern.
Right. I did say that at the last minute. And if you want to do something else, go ahead and do something else.
Yeah, exactly. And even though you attended the rehearsal, if you don't feel like performing, you don't have to come. So they're like this. It's I guess just like performing the 2 shows after that experience, and that the shows were so profound, and I was performing, but I think at the same time I was also audience, you know. It's, I don't know, it was really special, like I'm trying to articulate this. I guess just this thickness of being present with many people from different background, like really diverse. Like some of them are very trained dancers, and some of them are like
very trained actors, and some of them have never been on stage before. People of many ages and different abilities.
Exactly. But like on stage, just interacting with those people, that was really powerful. It really didn't matter what background, or we were just like playing, being in the moment, and raising our awareness together, and observing subtle information in the same space at the theater together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so amazing to hear you say that. And I was thinking about what the art is, if because the practice, if we're practicing this kind of liberation together, and we are welcoming what that means for each person, and what that means for us as a collective, and really we really in many ways were embracing what Mary would call the original anarchist, which is someone who is so attuned and aware to their environment and the requirements for their environment to function, that they behave quite harmoniously.
Yes, yeah.
Without rules or authority figures lording over them or instructing them on how to behave.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what I was trying to articulate. I think that's definitely what I experienced by this production. And
so I was thinking about, that's what we're doing. So what is the art? I mean, maybe one and the same, but my mind was brought back to Susan Sontag's Against Interpretation. And in that, I believe it's in that, she writes that art is a secretion of our activity. And I was thinking about, I do really feel that in many ways what the viewpoints provide is and what a lot of Mary's art was a very enriching activity or practice that secretes an experience that is profound. Amongst other people,
Yeah.
Yeah, really, I feel like I understand what Susan Sontag was saying now about that. Because what, we, Deborah and I walked in to that situation, I think, with total trust.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking back, I'm like, yeah, we knew it would work.
Yeah.
We knew everyone would do their part.
Yeah, it was so radical. I just couldn't believe this. I didn't really like say it, but so for me, it was a cleansing experience, because I was so maybe conditioned to this just traditional productions. So like I guess that brain got kind of triggered when you guys said, "Oh, it's not mandatory. Okay, you can do whatever you want." And my conditioned mind was like, "What?" Like, yeah, but then like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I know it's gonna work. I just have to be, And then it worked so beautifully.
It really did, and everyone performing their part is something that we could never have conceived of how it would go. To like be able to make something and for it to be a totally open future of like what this thing is.
It was a like total moment of non-hierarchical experience. Yeah.
And I also just want to say, if it's not clear, like the people who agreed to be a part of it, really, really took their work, were responsible for their work. It could have, I think it could have been a much messier situation, and I would have still felt like it was working. But the way that people were coming into this as an opportunity for them to, I'm not really sure how everyone thought of it individually, but I just want to point to a huge part of the reason that it worked so well is because, maybe it's because of they felt that we trusted them. I don't know. That people
definitely
came in really doing what they felt served their work and the piece and their own journey as artists and brought dignity and exploration and took risks and showed up.
Yes.
And asked themselves how much they were capable of showing up. And then when they did show up, they really, really put in the work required to have a depth of experience and offer depth in their work to the audience and to their collaborators.
Yeah. And then, you guys, at the beginning of the rehearsals, you guys started guided us to do 6 viewpoints exercises. And then I thought that was a huge part that many people opened their like artistic heart and really trust you guys and then just like observe this environment. I think that played a huge part because the space felt really safe and again like infinite freedom. Okay, I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And then that really served everyone well.
Yeah, and this idea of, freedom is always situated, and I as I hear you say this, I'm like, I'm so happy that you had that feeling that it was like infinite and could go on and on and on. And on the other hand, I think, at least I know this for myself, but I feel like maybe Sophia and I thought about this a little bit before you all came, and then also while we were working with you, but I feel like we were like, oh yeah, that's it. Right? There were moments where it was like, oh yeah, that. Oh yeah, that. And we were actually coaching you through the 6 viewpoints lenses, because I think we did have a desire for what aesthetically we also are interested in. And so you might not have like received like, be there right at that moment and do that and do this and do this and make sure you're wearing this and not that color lipstick, but that color, right? Like that kind of thing that's so often like so dictated in traditional theater. But there were definitely parameters that I think, of course, they were flexible, but in certain ways, I do feel like we were expressing also the parameters of the boundaries of the freedom as well.
Yeah, you guys definitely did, but I guess the reason why I said like unlimited, because it was like never heard of before.
Well, and both, I'm sure, like, I mean, I definitely experienced that, right? Both evenings felt very different, right? So there's a lot of unknown. And I do think that that's also a really important piece of what the 6 viewpoints can give people is this ability to function in the unknown with some material they might know, not maybe verbatim or word by word, for instance, but that there's something that they can kind of hold on to, right? That's the situatedness of the freedom. It's like, I'm going to hold on to that song or that piece of artwork, the memory of how it was last night. But then, oh my gosh, there's someone right in front of me. That's never happened before. Okay, now I have a whole number of choices that I can, right, from what we worked on in rehearsal, right? I can work with space or with timing or with shape. I might repeat, I might play with, I might find things, right? And so there's this, right, instead of saying it has to be one way, it's like, oh no, there's actually this whole smorgasbord of choices that can come up even though you're situated within some ideas too, right? It's like both.
Go ahead.
No, this might be a slightly off topic. So would you say like that like parameter is kind of temporary hierarchy?
Oh.
Well, I think the parameter is. This is an interesting thing for us to talk about. We haven't talked about this explicitly.
No, we haven't.
So I think for this piece, I mean, I definitely think we're exercising temporary hierarchy as directors, facilitators, performers who are like, okay, let's play. Can you do a floor pattern and find some unusual timing on it? Like, I'm asking you to do something in this moment, but I'm not placing myself above you. Perpetually, you know? I'm just like cueing something to see what happens. But I feel like when we're watching and coaching and suggesting and invoking and encouraging, I feel like when I'm like, oh, yes, this is it, this is it, this is it, what I'm experiencing in that moment is I'm experiencing it almost feels like a frequency. It's not just a visual aesthetic. It's almost a frequency of attention.
Yeah, for sure.
That I'm experiencing in the other bodies, and I'm witnessing but also feeling a quality of attention that enables people to go further into their interest and work. That's how I would see. That's how what I feel like I'm identifying. And yeah, I'm glad to hear you agree, because I have wondered to myself, like, is that just my aesthetic?
I wonder if it could actually be an aesthetic. I think
like a quality of attention is the aesthetic.
Yes, because it is something that you can experience, I think, also through your sight. Right? It is a visual aesthetic
because
to see
it changes
people
things.
Being attentive.
And they get more specific, and the differences between what people are doing grow, but because the attention is also diffuse, there is a bigger song that is arcing across the bodies. It's like having many pieces of music playing at once, and somehow it becomes like an orchestra of all music.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought it up. I absolutely agree with you, because I think that's the huge part, that it worked so beautifully, because like 6 few points exercises, in my opinion, you can correct me, it's about raising your awareness, because we're discovering subtler information. And then that's, I want to say, like, raising your frequency. So when you exercise 6 few points practice, and then on stage, it's like your frequency is very higher than usual. So whatever you do, it's not about like superficial aesthetic. It's about, because all the art is coming from your higher frequency. I think that's what I was hearing from what you say. I don't know if
I hear that. I feel like a little bit nervous about the language of high frequency, because I think low frequencies get thrown under the bus all the time, and that's kind of can lead to some like bypassing. But I know what you mean, because it does feel energetic, but it also, I think, is very tangible and physical, and there is a result in a way that I don't know that I know how to describe, but, well, here's one way of describing it. Which is so funny, because I do think it's like a part of it so much is the physical specificity. Like that raised awareness that you're talking about leads, and an awakened body, no matter your training, no matter you're living in your body every day, that leads to a greater level of specificity in this physical entity. But my experience within the piece, like when I was being the audience while performing, I felt like I was inside of a consciousness that we were either tuning into or collectively provoking. So like I think that's the frequency aspect, is that it becomes this conscious space, and then there's something, maybe because everyone's working inside of it, that feels unifying, or like a container,
or expanded consciousness.
That can hold all of it. And I was like, whoa, I feel like I'm in someone's mind. And then I'm like, is this art piece like, are we finding our way into a place that feels like Mary's mind? And is that a part of what feels so powerful about it? I don't know the answer to that question, it really made me question like what I thought a mind was. Because I think if I had not experienced that, but someone used those words to me, I would think that would be like a space that was uniform or singular or something, which is not. Like the ephemera is not a uniform piece. It's like bubbling with chaos and discrete differences and really extreme differences. But there does feel like a shared or expanded consciousness that maybe all of us attending to our own awareness and attending to being with each other starts to stir up.
Yeah,
and I think theater can be a really powerful tool as an actor, as a performer, because when you're on stage, you know that you're being seen. And then I think that also plays a huge part of having like raising awareness that, oh, people are watching me. I am being seen. So everything what I do is being seen.
And everything I see can be seen.
Exactly.
So what I am aware of, someone else can also experience.
So I think what you guys offered to the community there was a really, really huge gift. I think all the particles were really feeling and experiencing that powerful awareness that we have. And then in daily life we don't like necessarily like be able to like access that unless you really like focus on it, you know.
Yeah, I was so curious what it was like for the audience.
Yeah, me too. I always,
Yeah, well, we do have audio of the second talk back. If I'm just saying this out loud here, maybe somebody wants to comment. If you'd like to hear what we all talked about after one of the performances, that could be an interesting thing to include here on the podcast. It might be a little, sound quality might be a little bad, and we'll see, but that could be
Do we have a video of that? Maybe you can share a video.
Yes, also a video. Yeah,
we
that
have to
could
get
be good.
permission from
Oh,
everybody.
right.
Yeah, we would have to email everyone in the video, but yeah. Yeah, I am also, it's funny to think about the room in Salisbury and then also think about a room that I was in with Mary at Impulse Dance in Vienna in 2017. And you weren't there, Sophia. And you weren't there, Youlim, but I was there. And I was injured. And on the last day, I couldn't really walk. My hamstring had like seized up. And I was limping around. But I sat and watched the last class right next to Mary. And it was an open improvisation that went on for about an hour, where people came in and out. And she had started the week with this practice called the pool on the egg-shaped table, which really is about what we're talking about. It's really about attending to your own experience, and not worrying as much about being influenced or trying to create something with other people, but noticing that influence might exist and then going back to your own work. So that's how we started the week. And then she kind of built up a lot of the basic exercises to support that work. And then she came back to it, not explicitly, but I feel like I could read her intention that week, that she wanted to be like, I knew you could do it, right? Starting the week and it being like a total failure. Everyone like, why are we doing this? And then by the end of the week, kind of having, like 40 people in the room who had been there the whole time. And it for sure reminded me of what we were able to create with the particles, especially this time at Salisbury, where all of a sudden you just started to see the most beautiful connections kind of come up into the world, sort of be built up and then just kind of dissipate, and something else would come and dissipate over there, and something else would come and dissipate over there. And when I was sitting next to Mary, it's just like you were saying, like, are we in Mary's mind? But it was really wonderful because she sat next to me and she was like, look at that! Isn't that amazing? Just kind of almost commenting on like her disbelief that it also could work that way. So that she was like surprised and excited by her own provocation.
Wow.
And, just like so beautiful to sit next to her. And I got to witness the whole thing right next to her and just be like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever watched, I think.
I feel like just hearing your stories, like, it's celebration of beingness. Is it
Yes.
There's
Yeah, the
grammar error.
celebration of being.
Yeah, celebration of being. That I think that's how I felt when I was on stage and when I was being a particulist.
It's like, we exist, with like a big gesture.
Yeah,
We
it's like
exist, we're here.
we exist, and then
Yeah.
I don't have to create anything to be seen. I just can be myself. You know, and this is a celebration.
Yeah, and being yourself in while attending to your interest.
Exactly. I
Like
don't
I
have
can attend to my interest.
Yeah,
and I can celebrate that I'm being, and this is art.
Yes,
Me
I don't
attending
have
my
to
interest.
prove that like I can like kick my legs to like higher.
Oh my God, no.
I can like turn like no, it's just
And I really appreciate you telling that story about that last day together in Impulse Tons, and it just like a flood of memories of those moments of watching. And I mean, I think it's honestly my favorite thing about being a teacher is sitting in a room and being with people and then just seeing the most extraordinarily beautiful things happen. And it's like you're like feasting on art. And the way you describe a pool on an egg-shaped table and this open improv as things coalescing and then dissolving and coalescing and dissolving, also I'm like seeing some of the internal logic of our piece, hearing you say that, because this piece is called Ephemera, which is what remains when something ends or a life ends, when things dissolve. And right now, I think culturally and as humans, we're experiencing the potential of a lot ending. And to be in process and witness to things coalescing and ending and then dissolving and something else coalescing, ending, dissolving. Meanwhile, many other things are coalescing and also ending and dissolving and continuing in this like washing of the particles in the cycle of life, like moving through different bodies. People having immense impact on our lives, like Mary, and then dying, and we have to figure out how to deal with the fact that they impacted our lives so deeply, and then bringing new life into the world or new art into the world, and then that also ends.
that's a harmony.
Yes, harmony, and also is such an emotional thing to experience which is great, but also to feel the expansiveness of it. And like to be zooming out and being able to really see it as an ocean of particulates.
Yeah. And I, just to say one last thing before we wrap up this conversation, which could probably go on for a long time. But one of the things that I got really excited by in this moment where we were remembering the piece and then reimagining the piece, and I made, a list of re's, like Ari, was this moment that I feel like I usually get a little panicked when things are about to end, and I got really excited that I would get to re-forget, right? That cycle could happen, and that there would be another moment where we would get to remember the ephemera, and that it would get to be new and different again. Like that now that we've done it twice, it's like, oh, right, that's possible again. And who knows who we're going to be, where we're going to be, who's going to show up, and what is going to be happening in the world, that the reimagining of the work gets to evolve or change or be in response to the new particula. So I didn't have any post-show depression, which I think is also like such a big learning moment of like, oh, we get to forget and we get to live
So beautiful.
And then we'll get our notes out, hopefully, if you're out there and you want to do this with us, let us know. But right, that remembering was such a beautiful part, and I don't feel like we were even stressed about it. We were like, we'll just see what happens. Hopefully we'll remember this. Yeah.
I have to say this before we end. What Sophia said at the rehearsal. She said, every particle is portal to infinite. That's her quote now.
Yes. And and the remembering is that. It's a portal into the infinite. Yeah. Every particle and all you particleists out there, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are all portals to the infinite.
Yay!
And just want to make a shout out to Jamie McKittrick, who produced the entire show, the entire experience, and Joni Evans, who was our original producer for the Harold Klerman Festival.
Yeah, and thanks to Youlim and also to Miriam Coppersmith, who came to be our neutron dancer, lead particleist leaders.
It was my honor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have fun in the particles, everybody.
Yeah,
Go
thanks
shine.
for listening.
If you like this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel.